Anahim Lake is first and foremost pretty remote. I grew up, and it's small. Grew up growing up in a rural area. You know, there was 3 hours from cell phone service, and at the time it was about an hour and a half of gravel road to get to Anahim Lake. So, growing up out there, I gained a real appreciation for obviously the outdoors and spending time outside. That's still with me today. The people there are friendly people that are, you know, they're survivalists. Everybody out there has a great spirit. They're, you know, always willing to help, lend a hand, you know, because you never know when you're going to need a hand in return. I had a lot of fond memories. The ones that stick out to me would be, you know, going to, you know, elementary school out there. We had an ice rink outside, right outside the school that I skated on. Played basketball out there. Going to track meets down in Bella Coola was always a lot of fun as a child. We also had a community rink on the reservation that I used to go skate on, and I used to skate with the older kids, so I got a few shots that definitely hurt when I was a kid. I always looked up to my older cousins. I had a group of cousins that were, you know, 5 or 6 years older than me, and I always looked up to them. They're always well-spoken and well-behaved, and I really enjoyed hanging out with them. They had a trampoline in the backyard that I always enjoyed being the egg when we played Crack the Egg. They had a Nintendo over there too, so I always enjoyed playing that, in the Sega. Something that we didn't have at home, and they always had you know, snow machines and dirt bikes, so all those types of things that you know, I always wanted, but I got to try out whenever I went over there. My dad was a goaltender. He was drafted by the Flyers. He had a big influence on me. I always wanted to be like Dad, so I think that was probably the main reason that I became a goalie ultimately. Sometimes I do wonder what it would have been like if I would have stuck to playing defense. That was something that I also really enjoyed when I was a kid. Well, my mom obviously has the leadership qualities that I looked up to. My grandma as well. She's a very hardworking person. You know, she's very dedicated to the betterment of the community. You know, it's not always an easy position to be in a position of leadership. My analogy to being a chief is kind of like being a referee. No matter what call you make, somebody's not going to be happy about it. So it's, I'm very proud of her. She's, like I said, a very hardworking person, and she puts her heart and soul into the betterment of the community. So I think that she's the perfect person for that job, and I hope everybody appreciates that. My children call my mom Atsu, which is grandmother in our native language. And, you know, I think right now they're still pretty young to understand most of it. Livy's starting to get to an age where I think she understands a little bit more. As we progress, I'll continue to tell her stories about our past, and hopefully that she'll take that into account and be a part of a better future. Sustenance hunting and gathering is a big part of our community. It's, like I said, they're survivalists, and that's always been a huge part of our identity as a peoples in Anahim Lake and its surrounding area. It's something that everybody takes pride in. You know, there's traditional practices that are still practiced today as a means of sustenance, and like I said, I always enjoyed the outdoors and being able to put food on the table for my family. So I think those practices are essential to our people, and hopefully that I'll be able to pass that knowledge on. I hope they enjoy just spending the time outside and understanding the you know, nature and how the cycle of life works. I think that's the most important thing, that these resources need to be protected. The views of traditional territories get overlooked a lot in most areas. You know, the urbanization of you know, traditional territories. I don't think a lot of people understand that this was somebody's home at some point. So I'm really thankful that these are being recognized. I think we're, gradually beginning to understand, the cycle of colonialism that has taken place in our country and in the United States, and the trickle effect of that colonialism. And it's echoed through generations, and hopefully we can break the cycle. We have the children of children who went to residential schools, and I'm glad that these things are being recognized in Canada. My grandmother went to St. Joseph's Residential School, and my mom has told me most of the stories that I've heard of residential schools, and she still gets very emotional about it. It's a very hard subject. With all the discoveries over the past couple of years, it has really brought to light what a dark part of our history of Canada that has been. So I'm glad that these things are being brought forward and being reconciled. There's a grieving period that helps healing, and once we all move through this together as a peoples, I hope that we can start looking forward to the future and how we can right the wrongs of the past and continue to make a better future. I think it comes down to helping create programs for youth. I know out in Anahim Lake especially, access to youth sports has always been a struggle. I know here that being in an urban environment, it may be a little easier. So I would like to see continued contributions to youth sport, and I do believe that sports have a big role in creating not only healthy children, but building character in those children. Be proud of your heritage, and continue to be a positive example for those that are following you. I think I said this last night in an assembly, that leading by example has always been my way of leading, and I think that your actions will always speak louder than your words. So I just want to wish everybody the best of luck and keep going.